What's going on, everyone? So, the reports that came out the other day that the Lakers may value continuity and that they may end up keeping Rui Hachimura in the starting unit. That they might go with, kind of what we've all talked about all offseason of Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, and DeAndre Ayton. Now, offensively, it would be ridiculous, right? I think the Lakers are going to be a top offense regardless, but their best offensive unit is probably going to be those five, right? Those, you could even argue, are your five best players. And so makes sense to go with your five best players in the starting unit and kind of run it that way and operate it as such. My issue is, to me, your five best players don't always translate to the best fit of the roster or what is to put you in the best position overall for the team, right? Like Manu Ginobili, right, is the example that gets used a lot, like particularly with Austin Reeves and stuff like that of like, hey, he should be the sixth man and stuff, right? The reason Manu, who could have been a starter on any team in the league at that point outside of like a handful of teams, and even then, those teams might have found a way to try, put Manu at the point if you have to, right? But the reason Manu works so well off the bench is because it allowed the Spurs to have better balance in the starting unit. It allowed the Spurs to have different looks in lineups and have better balance between the two units, the bench unit and the starting unit. And it led to, a Spurs dynasty, and they were able to rattle off 5 championships, do all these things, right? So to me, just going with your 5 best players doesn't always mean that that's the best version of the team. We have seen that you need to have that balance. You need to have that defensive versatility, that athleticism, right? Like Lakers are a flawed team, but every team is flawed. There is no Kevin Durant on the Warriors to where it's like, just pack it up. No one's beating that team, right? Lakers, I do believe, have a very good chance of winning an NBA championship. Talked about it, right? There is a version of this Lakers team that is hoisting the Larry O'Brien at the end of the season. But there's also a version of this team that's a first-round exit. There's a version of this team that's a play-in team, right? Like, we don't know and can't see and predict the future. We don't know how pieces are going to fit, how healthy guys are going to be. We don't know how, if it even works, right? Russell Westbrook isn't like the best example because of fit-wise, but Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis on paper was ridiculous. I mean, that 2021 or 2022 roster, right? That roster that year, I think it was 2021, but point is that roster was on paper like one of the greatest rosters ever assembled. It was just like littered with like Hall of Famers and stuff, and Carmelo and Dwight and all these infamous role players, right? And it just didn't pan out. Lakers have had several teams over the years on paper that was like, give them the championship. No one's beaten them, and it didn't pan out, right? So again, it's not as simple as putting your 5 best guys out there, or at least on paper. You need to have that proper balance. I just think going with that starting 5, I think during the regular season, you'll be fine, right? And I've talked about this for years now, right? That was my big problem. Even when we injected Rui into the starting 5 originally, right? Lakers were like 8-0 or whatever, and people were really excited. I made a whole video about it, and I talked about it on several occasions. I was like, I love that the Lakers are 8-0, but what happens when we actually have to play defense and we can't stop anybody? And I said, I am really concerned come playoff time, because you can get away with a lot during the regular season. Right? Play a lot of bad teams multiple times, stuff like that. Like, you can beat good teams, you get hot more often than not because you're playing. But when things start tightening up, and teams are now prepared and they can focus and lock in on just your weaknesses, and, the offense dries. I don't care how good offensively you are. You're going to have nights where you dry up. We've seen that happen, and what ends up happening. Now, Luka is, in another universe compared to D'Angelo Russell, but still, it's like, are those 5 offensively going to be good enough 4 times around? Maybe, right? Or are they going to be at least serviceable enough defensively to be able to carry you 4 times around? Right? Now, there have been outliers. Denver, when they won their championship, they were the 15th ranked defense in the regular season, and they were the second worst defense in the postseason. And they were so good, such a well-oiled machine offensively, and they weren't like, the number one ranked offense. That year, I think it was Sacramento, was actually the number one ranked offense by like a large margin. They were like, I think 7th off the top of my head, something like that. They weren't like near like the super elite, like, oh my God, they're the best offense in all of basketball until they got to the playoffs. And then they were just such a well-oiled machine. They just like ran through everybody. They didn't have to get stops because you weren't able to outscore them. And we saw it with the Lakers, right? Lakers ran into them. When they're cooking and Lakers offense is cooking, we're up 20. We're feeling good, right? That series we get. So like if the games ended at halftime, we sweep Denver, right? But they don't end at halftime, right? You got to play the full 48. And when everything was cooking and we're firing on all cylinders, Lakers up 20 or double digits. Like every halftime we're up double digits. But then the offense dries up and we can't stop Denver. And they just kept tacking, and then boom, finally broke through. And next thing you know, you look up and the game's over. And it's like, it happened again and again and again and again. It's just like, and then you get the next round, right? Like, that's the problem. And we even saw it with Minnesota, right? Like, we weren't able to generate stops. So when our offense wasn't cooking to the level that we needed to cook, they were able to score. Anthony Edwards was able to close out, and it just became a problem. I just would prefer better balance. What we saw from Jared Vanderbilt defensively, I think there's an argument to be made, and we'll see. It was one game, so I don't want to, again, too high, too low either way. But if we can get that version of Jared Vanderbilt that we saw, again, I've talked about 2023 Jared Vanderbilt, I think you need to start him. That just because you start Jared Vanderbilt doesn't mean that has to be your closing lineup. It doesn't mean he has to play 30 minutes, right? You could start him and, have him play 20 minutes, play first 5 minutes, and then like 5 minutes in the second, 5 minutes in the third, and 5 minutes in the fourth, maybe early in the fourth type thing. And like, just because you start a guy doesn't mean you have to play him 35 minutes. Doesn't even necessarily mean he has to be the guy that closes, right? I think you should start the best balance of this team, which personally to me, I think is Luka Doncic, Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron James, and DeAndre Ayton. Talked about this several times, but just I'll quickly summarize it. Basically, Luka likes to perform in the first quarter. Like half of his field goal attempts come in the first quarter. He wants to go drop 20 to 30 points in the first quarter. So let Luka be Luka in the first quarter. LeBron has always historically been more passive in the first quarter. So let Luka be Luka. Get your best defensive players, especially if Jared Vanderbilt really is the 2023 Jared Vanderbilt, and he looked that in that first Phoenix Suns game. You get that with the healthy Marcus Smart. Now you have the defense. So when Luka Doncic, I was going to say Luka Smart, Luka Doncic, when he's cooking, you now have the defense to start to separate. Right? Where we saw last year at times, Luka would go drop 20, 25 in the first quarter, and we're only up 5, or we're only up, 7. And it's like, come on, that can't be happening. But it's because we didn't have the defense to really push the gap. Now you'd have the defense to push the gap, and the games that Luka is struggling and not shooting the lights out, well, guess what? You have the defense to at least keep it close. As we saw in the Phoenix game, when you can't get stops, you can get blown out in a hurry, right? So I'd rather have the defense to try to close the gap. And then if you need to inject offense along the way, rather than lean heavily into the offense, and now you blink and you're down 20 and now you're playing catch up the whole game, right? So to me, I think you should at least bare minimum have Jared Vanderbilt in that starting lineup, or if you want to go Marcus Smart, whatever. I just think if Jared Vanderbilt gives you that, because Marcus Smart isn't like a career 40% three-point shooter. Jared Vanderbilt is the best defensive player on this team if he's back to that 2023 Jared Vanderbilt. Our best lineups the last handful of years that we've had Jared Vanderbilt have all included Jared Vanderbilt. Even when Darvin Ham, right, that following year, we're running it back, right? Like, our best 5-man units were with Jared Vanderbilt. He just didn't want to start Jared Vanderbilt anymore, and then he got injured, and it was a lot of things, right? There was a lot that went into it. It wasn't just that, but it was like, that was our best 5-man unit. Now you're replacing Luka Doncic with D'Angelo Russell, and you're replacing Anthony Davis with DeAndre Ayton, but, Luka is better than Anthony Davis as far as star and whatnot. And DeAndre Ayton, I would take over D'Angelo Russell. So I think you have the better of the two players. And if Jared Vanderbilt can get back to that 2023, and then whatever he provides you offensively would be fantastic. But if you can get back to that, now the Lakers, I think, would have just a better balance, because I don't think they're going to bring Austin Reeves off the bench, even though I should. My concern is that they start those starting five of Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, and DeAndre Ayton. It's really good, right? Because I think it will be good, and I think it'll look good, and I think it'll help you win a bunch of games because you're going to be really good offensively and you get away with it in the regular season. My concern is once you get to the playoffs and things start getting physical, things start tightening up, teams are more aggressive, they're closing out harder, they're scheming better defensively to slow you down, and you can't get stops. So unless you are just like lights out, you're going to have your struggles. You're going to have your issues. And we've seen that on several occasions already. And I worry that that's going to happen again, where I'd rather have the better balance. Yes, you can always switch and change it up in the playoffs, but the whole point is you want to have the structure and continuity and all those things going into the playoffs. You want to know, okay, these are our starters, these are our rotation guys. Yes, you might make a small change here and there or key adjustment here and there, but for the most part, you want it to kind of be orderly, right? And my concern is that that's not going to happen and we're going to be in trouble. And, maybe not. Right? Like I said, maybe the offense is just so good and we go on a Denver run. And the offense is just that good and it's just like, man, you can't stop. Like, they're too good offensively. You can't slow them down. Luka Doncic just has too many weapons. Rui Hachimura, if he's shooting 43% from three-point range, if Austin Reeves can improve his three-point shooting, LeBron James, I expect him to, continue to be a good three-point shooter. Now you got DeAndre Ayton and his offensive capabilities. It's very possible Lakers are the best offense in basketball, best offense in the postseason, and just good enough defensively overall to where they're going to be able to get the wins and end up hoisting Larry O'Brien. But I would prefer to bring Rui off the bench, personally. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.